interactions. So the first of the types of wave interactions that we're going to be discussing here, you guys actually started working with yesterday, and that's reflections. Now, it doesn't matter whether we're talking about a mechanical wave or a non-mechanical wave. All waves have these three different methods of interacting with barriers or changes in medium. So first up, we've got reflection. A reflection occurs when a wave reaches a barrier and bounces into a new direction. Occurs when a wave reaches a barrier and I'm using bounces because reflects, I don't really want to use the word reflects in a definition for reflection. Bounces into a new direction. All right. It might have been better previously. When we were talking about this in terms of the stuff we saw yesterday with ropes on a string, we saw that there are a few different types of barriers that we could reach. A fixed barrier versus a free barrier. So for a fixed barrier, as we shook the string and it sent a wave down and reached that endpoint, what did you notice about the reflection of the wave? It flipped over. So it inverted, or as Caroline was pointing out, it rotated 180 degrees because the leading edge of the wave is still the leading edge of the wave. No, I'm talking about the person who was here yesterday. Okay, so as it reflects off a fixed barrier, the wave does invert from its original position. Alternatively, if we had a free barrier, meaning one which is able to have the parts of the medium move throughout the entire medium, as we send a wave down to our free barrier, the particle at the end of the medium moves up and down still for our transverse wave and sends our wave back identically to the way it came down. So it doesn't invert it, it simply reflects it. Doesn't invert the wave or invert the amplitude. And a fixed barrier does invert amplitude. Okay. For other kinds of waves where we're not talking about something on a string in a fixed scenario like this, so if we start talking about light, if we start talking about sound, water, any of those waves reflect following what we call the law of reflection. Law of reflection. So, for example, if we're talking about light, and I've got a mirror here, mirror, and I have a light wave that's inbound, I can measure the angle of incidence that this light strikes with compared to a normal line. Normal line, of course, being a line that is perpendicular to the plane of the mirror. Okay? This is my wave, my light wave. This is the normal line, not the reflection. Just saying this is perpendicular to the plane of the mirror. Good? Okay? So, yeah. I would measure my angle of incidence here, theta I. So the angle between the where the wave came in and the normal. Then the outbound wave would reflect at what we would call the angle of reflection, theta R. Now, this is probably the most complex equation we get all year, so make sure you follow it really close. So for the law of reflection, what it states is that theta I is equal to theta R. So like I said, most complex one we get all year. Normal line exists because that's where you're measuring the angle from. These ones would still be the same, you're saying? Yeah. It works for, oh, it helps us for when we start talking refraction. It keeps the same reference spot. Yeah.
So as you know, waves wiggle. So when it hits the mirror, does like would like the phase of that kind of like
It doesn't, because it's the direction of the motion of the energy,
so it
not
would
the
become like a
motion of
line
the
going
particle.
straight through the wiggle.
Right. Yep. Any kind of wall. I mean, you've heard an echo before. An echo is a reflection of a sound wave. Yeah, it would be more of a free barrier. Yep. I see what you're saying there. All right. So reflection, fixed barriers, free barriers, the law of reflection itself. That brings us to types of mirrors. Types of mirrors. Okay. So typically when we talk a mirror, we're talking about a flat mirror, one that you would use in your bathroom or the rear view mirror of your car. Anything coming in just simply bounces back out, obeying the law of reflection. However, we also have a couple of other unique types of mirrors. First one up is a concave mirror. I mean, if you'd like to rewrite physics, go ahead.
That's what I've been telling you to do
A concave mirror is a mirror in which all of the normal lines of the mirror intersect at a singular point. So all of the normal lines of the mirror intersect at a singular point. So we get something that looks like this, and any light ray coming in, I'm not going to bother with the squiggles, I'm just going to draw them straight, still follows the law of reflection, as the incident angle is still equal to the reflected angle. However, because the mirror itself is curved, the outgoing ray, or the reflected beam, goes in a new direction. If we take multiple beams of light, we do find that they intersect at what we would call a focal point.
that. Is that where foci comes from and oval?
I'm not sure which was first.
But of the foci and an oval, where is it from?
Yeah. Yep.
Plus the
So, concave mirror. Okay. You should be able to notice a few properties about it. First of all, you're not looking at a wide area of view, correct? And for the most part, things should be upside down.
Your face isn't upside down.
Right, my face is not upside down. And that's because I'm inside the focal point. You guys are outside the focal length, so any light that's coming from you is going to flip. However, because I am inside of it, the light hasn't had the opportunity to pass that focal length and hasn't actually flipped before it reaches your eyes. Okay? That's lenses, that's a different idea. Also lenses. Oh, dentist chairs. I thought you were talking ocular ones. Dentist chair. Yeah, that sounds correct. Yep. Yep. So a few things about this. First of all, you guys can tell that I'm being blown up very significantly by this. Yeah, mirror rooms use a lot of varied curves. Okay, so using a mirror like this, we can take all the light that would be incident on one area and refocus it to one location. So what this is useful for is if I want to see significant detail of something far away. So telescopes, any reflecting telescope uses this. Satellite dishes all follow this exact principle. What else would be? Hold on. The National Telescope. Oh, you mean the Very Large Array. I know which one you're talking about. It's not the right name for it, but yeah, they all telescopes use the same principle. Regardless of whether we're talking about it measuring infrared, radio, visible light, they all work the same way. No, he's got a different one. We'll get to his later. If you are right at the focal point, it's going to be a pinpoint of light because all of the light will be exactly here. Sure. So I can re-image. You guys see that through it? Yeah. You can see that I can reflect the writing from the board here. So a concave mirror is unique because it can create what we call a real image, meaning it can reproject light onto a singular point. And if I get it just right, oh, this one's focal point's really weird. Yeah. Due to the curvature of this one, I'm not going to get it quite right, but you can kind of see down there. I'm refocusing most of the light into a singular spot. It's not a perfect mirror, so all the normals aren't actually crossing in the exact same location because it's not well made.
What's the green?
The green is a refracted section that is actually reflecting off okay, so some of the light travels through the mirror, and some of the green is being filtered out. You guys have all heard what color is a mirror? A mirror is green, yeah? Okay.
Yes.
The glass of the mirror will filter out green light. So any of the light that's actually passing through this first portion because of imperfections in it is bouncing back out. The non-green is passing through, and the green is getting reflected back to create that spot. All right, so uses for concave mirrors, telescopes, satellites, anything where we're trying to focus a lot of a singular kind of wave onto a specific location. You've all seen some kind of spy movie where they've got a listening device and it's got a concave shape and they're trying to channel that in, not a megaphone, listening device. Megaphone makes you louder. Right? So, listening devices. No. That's a different idea. All right. So any of these work for a concave mirror. Next one is a convex mirror, which is the exact opposite. All of the normal lines are splayed apart from each other. All of the normal lines of the mirror point apart. So if I shape this, still following the law of reflection, but now the light spreads out. Then we get something like this. Yeah.
Those are the things you see on stores.
So they can have wider view for security purposes. Or so that when you're trying to go around a corner and you see if something's coming, you'll see this in hospitals. Yep. So this will also be the shaping of any blind spot mirrors. All the light coming in from out there and spreads it out.
So it essentially zooms.
Right. So while the concave mirror focuses on singular locations and provides a lot of detail about that focused location, a convex mirror gives you less detail about a larger array of areas.
What if you shine light on that? You know that one condenses to like
I don't have enough.
is that one just
It just spreads it out, yeah. That's one. I've got a lot more to go through. So. We got more. All right. So convex mirrors. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, Car mirrors are not perfectly flat like your side mirrors. They are slightly convex because it'll say object in mirror appears closer than or is closer than it appears. That's because your mirror is slightly convex and it's picking up more area than you would otherwise normally be able to see. No, they just don't put that printing to be distracting on the driver's side mirror. They're actually both slightly convex. The writing's only on the passenger side? Yeah, that's so it's not distracting in your motion check mirror. Okay. So blind spot mirrors, these are for like blind corners and security mirrors, all of which are trying to provide you with a wider field of view, but at the sacrifice of detail. All right. Questions to that point? Yeah. Yep. So if I drew my normal line here, theta and I and theta r are still the same. It's just that because this is no longer facing this way, but the plane in the mirror is that way at that exact location, it's still reflecting around a normal. It's just that that normal is no longer facing that way. Right. Say again? So it loses detail because not as many photons or not as many waves are coming from, are refocusing back to a single spot. So if I took a whole bunch of light from here and shown it here, I only get a small portion of that light coming to me. The rest goes scattering throughout the rest of the region. Okay? Only when I'm looking here, every different wave throughout this entire thing gets focused to one spot. So I get a lot of detail. It's actually as if my eye was the size of this whole thing. For the convex one? It's not that it's not focused, it's that it's got less detail. So if you look at your rear view mirror, or not your rear view, but your blind spot mirror, versus looking back, when you turn and look back, things will look like they have more detail because you're getting more light from them, as opposed to if you looked at the blind corners. Yes, but I don't like using zoom in and out because when we get to refraction in a minute here, if you just zoom in, you don't actually get the amount of detail. It'd be blurrier. So the image quality is not as good when we talk about the convex mirror. So, I mean, zoomed out, but like we couldn't fix that. There's no way to like take all that information into a computer and scan through it somehow. There's just not as much information there. All right. So we got types of mirrors. We got the law of reflection. We talked about fixed and free barriers. The next one I've got here for reflection is a standing wave. Yeah, this is all reflection. A standing wave is a wave that is created when a wave is reflected back on top of itself, creating zones of alternating constructive and destructive interference. A wave that is created when a wave reflects on itself, creating zones of alternating constructive and destructive interference. Constructive and destructive interference. Yes. If you were on the free barrier, yes. Okay. So first of all, constructive and destructive interference. Constructive interference is when two waves interact with each other to create a larger amplitude. Destructive interference is when two waves interact with each other to create a smaller amplitude. Constructive interference exists when waves match up their crests and troughs to make larger amplitudes, And destructive interference occurs when a crest meets a trough and they subtract from each other to create a lower amplitude. Destructive interference when crests meet troughs to create smaller amplitudes. Definitions there. So antinodes are locations of maximum displacement. Displacement. And nodes are locations of completely destructive interference. Not really, because they alternate between completely destructive and constructive, because they're going between double the amplitude to 0, where it's completely destructive, and then back to double the negative amplitude. So we can't really say it's double the, or it's completely constructive, because that always is cycling in and out. Completely destructive interference. So noise canceling headphones. Noise canceling headphones are designed by taking a microphone that picks up sounds coming in and then putting a speaker on the inside of your headphone. So sure, they're muffs, they try to block out some sound, but they actually then emit the exact same sounds at an inverted frequency. So a wave coming in and a wave going out. To completely destructive interference at your ear. Noise canceling headphones where the microphone has shifted at all no longer work and everything just gets louder because the waves are not completely 180 degrees out of phase anymore. Really any at all, and it doesn't work. It depends on how they're constructed. Beyond just blocking out sound, this concept of completely destructive interference and standing waves has been used in the last, I think it was 4 years ago now, to create kind of a force field around vehicles for shock waves from bombs. We can now protect vehicles and people inside vehicles from explosive shock waves by having microphones that pick up the incoming sound wave and then invert it by 180 degrees and re-emit it with completely destructive interference to protect whatever's inside from a explosive shock wave. Not shrapnel, that's different, but the shock wave itself. Yeah. No, because that's photons. That's very, very different. All right. Yeah.
If it's a completely inverted wave,
Yep.
that's different than what you just showed.
So the wave that I was sending down was in one set of phase. the wave that was coming back was completely inverted from the original one coming down. So that was showing this fixed barrier idea. It's just that as the two waves are moving in their opposite directions, that pattern that they create was the standing wave.
So, in like a shock wave with the waves, it's not going to be like that because it's not going to be continuous. It's gonna be a
Right,
slow wave.
right.
So then they only have to negate it once.
Yeah. All right. Standing waves, antinodes, nodes. That brings us to refraction. Oh, hang on. Nope, I'm still going. Refraction. We are now on refraction. Okay. Refraction is the changing of the path of a wave due to a change in medium. The changing of a path of a wave due to a change in medium. In the different mediums, they do need to have different wave speeds. So whether that be a wave going from water to oil, you will see a change in the direction of the wave, or of air to water, you will see a change in direction of waves. But whatever it is, as we change mediums with different wave speeds, the wave will actually bend because of those different wave speeds. Waves bend because of different wave speeds. Has anyone in here ever tried spear fishing or bow fishing? Actually, yes. Sweet. Where'd you have to aim? Where'd you have to aim? Okay. Lower, ahead of the fish. So you didn't aim at the fish, correct? You didn't aim at the fish because as the light from the fish, here's our fish. There's our fish. As light from that fish is coming towards the surface, the light itself changes its direction. So here's our water versus air, water, air. And the light ray, rather than traveling in a straight line, actually bends at that junction. So instead, it now travels up into a different location. So while the fish would look like it's at a lower location, a higher location, we actually have to aim at a different spot in order to actually make contact with it. Yeah. Yes. Yep. So let's see here. I've got a couple examples of it. Right. So this would be where it would go, or the apparent path of light. This would be the actual path of light. Okay. This follows what we call Snell's law. Snell's law. Snell's law shows that the sine of theta 2 divided by the sine of theta 1 is equal to the velocity of the wave in substance 2 divided by the velocity of the wave in substance 1, where theta 2 and theta 1 theta 2, theta 1. Okay, so where each of those angles is referenced to a normal line, which is why that's what we use for the law of reflection. And the velocities of the waves are different and dependent upon the medium that they're in. That V is velocity. Okay, we can see that. Simple demo here. I've got a container of water that is filled to, hopefully I got it halfway. Close. All right, I'm going to shine a light in at, I can't tell what angle that is, I'm on the wrong side of it, 55 degrees, and it shines out at dot 55. So as I make it more vertical, sine of 90 is what? 1. So sine of 90 over sine of 90, this would show that it doesn't actually change, correct? So it just goes straight down. But as I make the wave, or sorry, the angle more extreme, I should have more extreme bending of that line.
Yeah.
So it's down here. Okay?
Well,
Yeah. There's 100% its existence. Yep. Okay. When we start talking about refraction, one of the other details that comes up is that certain things will bounce when they hit surfaces at certain angles. So I have a nice green laser here. Did I tell you guys about my professor who taught like this?
yeah.
And she actually shined the laser out.
Yeah.
All right. So,
He also professor that ran everybody's
no.
Yes, he
No,
did.
no.
Yeah,
You're making
no,
it up.
no, deep there.
He said that the entire class loved it.
All right. So what we're looking at here, I'm shining the laser. Can you guys see that? Andy? Oh, what happened to my?
Shake the battery. Tighten it back.
Blow it in. Flashlight flash.
Flashlight.
I should touch look at it and see if it's working.
That's how you fix guns, actually.
Ooh. Was it working really well a minute ago? Now it's basically done.
Close and close.
Does anyone remember like the incident where people are like taking really strong green lasers and like shining them at airplanes?
Which one?
Alright.
So I'll use a different laser. Because I just happen to have spare lasers. Alright, so not actually as powerful as the other one.
Oh.
How was it not?
So I've got a red beam this time. Shining this in here. There are a few different refractions that occur. The first refraction occurs when it passes through the side here. So as the beam of light is coming in, it is pointing at one angle, but it strikes the it's actually a plastic. The plastic here hits an angle down at a different angle. Okay, going into the water, if you need to move the seat, go ahead and move. The laser refracts again, so it reaches the bottom. And then we see two things happen. One, laser passes through, refracted yet again by the plastic. Two, it reflects. So I'm actually, if you look up here, I should have a pair of dots.
Get it on that mirror.
Reflected again.
I'm going to try this way. One. Well, I've got the one.
Oh wait.
Okay, there we go. Now we've got two. So, one of those is being refracted through the water. One of them is simply being reflected from the bottom of the tank. I should be able to get a pair on the top of the tank where one's reflecting off the bottom of the tank and the other is not. But I think I probably need to clean this tank since I've never done that.
It just sits in the water.
No, I empty it and then just let dust accumulate. Alright. The other one to look at here, so what we're seeing is some of the light reflects off the top, some of the light passes through and refracts, right? The angle at which all of the light refracts rather than reflects is what we call the critical angle. So basically, as this approaches an undefined value, where it becomes undefined, none of the light will refract and all of it now reflects. This is the kind of, well, yeah, so it's sine of 0, but it really depends on what this ratio is. Okay?
Physics fish. Yeah.
I had fish once, not in the classroom. They lasted maybe a week.
We'll take care of what they do.
My friend had one
It's
for
not what they did.
Shut up, that's
She's not
yellow
kidding.
fish.
But I'm bad with fish. Alright, so when I got this piece of fiber optic cable, the angle at which light refracts out of a fiber optic cable
What?
is
Wait,
very, very
The
high.
internet.
The internet right there. So what we actually see is that all of the data or all of the grains are reflected inside the fiber optic cable because the angle that it would have to strike the side of the cable is too high. In order to pass it through, I have to have it basically at 90 degrees to the wave. You can see it passes through over there. But if I get this lined up correctly.
So what's called a fiber optic cable?
Well, the optic portion, yes. Fiber, I'm not 100% certain. I think it's because they have lots and lots and lots of these all matched together. Previously, we used electrical signals to try to transmit data, cell phones, internet access. But the other thing, the fiber optics allows you to go light speed with it. Because we're not using basically lasers to transmit the data. Correct.
It's
Point
still
zero
loses-
zero
still
two.
loses some energy to like speed stuff.
They're not 100% efficient because nothing is. But they're pretty close. It's about as good as we're going to get unless we go quantum computer. All right. Let's see here. So where are we? Snell's law we've got here. Beyond just being able to understand, guys, I need your attention here for 3 more minutes. Beyond just being able to predict which way light's going to go, obviously we use this for fiber optics. We can also use this to identify materials. If you're wondering if a gemstone is cubic zirconium or if it's actual diamond, both of those have a unique speed of light. And because of that, they're going to refract light at a specific angle. So we can actually use Snell's law to determine what substances are actually made out of and see if they're what they claim to be. So gem identification. Gem. Okay. What else could I put on here? Those will work. Oh, Snell's law. Sorry, the big one here. These are also used for corrective lenses. Snell's law determines whether what kind of prescription you're going to need for eyeglasses or contacts. Determined based on the light coming into the glasses or contact, the thickness of those then refracts the light coming through them, and we'll take a little look at what kinds of lenses I'm guessing tomorrow. So used for corrective lenses. And Galileo was brought up earlier. This, or a refracting telescope, is what Galileo used. So certain telescopes. To be continued tomorrow.